This principle is separation of powers. Basically the idea that every branch of our federal government has things that it is responsible for and it alone. And if you go back to the earliest form of American government, it wasn't always this way. The Articles of Confederation, if you remember them, only had one branch of government. They had just Congress. That's it. No executive branch, no judicial branch. And of course this reflects the fears of the early founders, right? Because they were afraid of a powerful monarch, so no executive branch, we don't need a president, we'll just have Congress. And no judicial branch, because any good judicial branch has to be able to rule on disputes between the states. And the states at this time were almost like their own little countries. They did not want any high court telling them what to do. And so when they made the Articles of Confederation, it was just Congress, and it was a mess because there were conflicts and there was no head of the government. You need some direction. So in our Constitution, we outlined three branches of government, each with their own powers. First, we have the legislative branch. Here in the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C., they make the laws for our country. It is a bicameral legislature. Bicameral means two houses. We have a Senate with two senators from every state, and we have a House of Representatives where each state has a certain number of representatives depending on their population. This was a result of the Great Compromise, the Connecticut Compromise by Roger Sherman, because big states wanted representation based on population and small states wanted to have a say. So they make the laws for our country at the federal level. Next, we have our executive branch. They're created by Article 2 of the Constitution. And the executive branch, as you know, is made up of the president and the vice president. It's made up of the cabinet. And the cabinet is the president's group of advisors. And each cabinet member is the secretary of their department. So these are executive agencies, and you've known some of them already. The Department of Education, the Department of Defense, and so on and so forth. These organizations, these executive agencies, are responsible for carrying out or executing the laws that the legislative branch creates. So these two have to work together, but they each have their own distinct responsibilities. And finally, we have the judicial branch here in the Supreme Court building, also in Washington, D.C. And the Supreme Court is responsible for taking the laws of the legislative branch and interpreting what they mean. All laws, no matter how specific they try to be, do leave some room for interpretation. And so, this is the primary responsibility of the Supreme Court today. Now, they do weigh in on disputes, but most of the reason why we care about the Supreme Court is because they tell us what is and what is not constitutional. This is an idea called judicial review, which we will be talking about later. So again, legislative makes the laws, executive carries out the laws or enforces or executes the laws, and the judicial branch interprets the laws. It says what the laws mean. That's three branches. You probably are wondering why there's not a fourth picture up here. Well, there's only three branches, so I decided to put this picture of a cat instead. And the cat has fur that makes it look like it's always surprised all the time. That's not its mouth, it's fur. And so it's like perpetually surprised. What is it surprised by? Nobody knows. Anyway, that's separation of powers. Thanks.